Hello, I'm Steve Hemmond from the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, MARS. As part of our professional development program, we are producing video clips that present different aspects about the operation of a regional school district from the viewpoint of school committee members, superintendents, business managers, and staff. This program is titled Basic Introduction to Financial Oversight. Disaster can happen if you don't pay attention. For this program, we have Stacy Jackson and Julie Kelly here. They are both former members of the Wachusett Regional School District School Committee. They will be presenting from a forum that they did at an MASSC annual conference concerning the financial crisis they faced several years ago. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Stacy Jackson and Julie Kelly.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Steve. What we wanted to show you here was a couple headlines that were actual news stories that happened to us in the summer of 2012. This is how we spent our summer vacation. And this just gives you an example of what can happen when you don't have the proper financial oversight of a school district budget. So we hope that this video series, as well as others, will help any new school committee members, business managers, superintendents have a better knowledge of how to maintain really good financial oversight. Next slide, please. So as we can see, disaster can happen if you don't pay careful attention. And again, we want to show some of the things that we learned over the course of this time so that you don't end up in our shoes. Next slide. So the school committee has three primary responsibilities that are charged to them by Mass General Law. And these are to select and terminate the superintendent, review and approve budgets, and establish goals and policies. That's it. Those are the only three things that school committee members are charged with doing. They are not charged with micromanaging the day-to-day operations of the district. We hire a superintendent who is a competent individual who has the educational background and the managerial skills to be able to manage the district. And we give that duty to the superintendent without taking on those duties ourselves. But one of the most important duties that school committee members have is to manage and review the budget. It's a tremendous role and one that requires an extensive set of skills. And those are a bunch of skills that most school committee reps don't know going into the job. Neither of us had a business background prior to going into these roles, but we had to learn very, very quickly the best way to review and manage those budgets. Next slide, please. A couple of our most favorite quotes that we have are, "You have the fiduciary responsibility to safeguard taxpayer money," by Glenn Kuchar of MASC. "And every single dime that comes into the district and is appropriated out of the district falls under the direct purview of the school committee." And we learned that from a DOR official back when we had our financial meltdown of 2012. So what do those quotes really mean, though? What does it mean with the fiduciary responsibility and managing every dime that comes in and out of there? Now, I would love to say that in the summer of 2012, we were brand new to the school committee and we didn't know what we were doing. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We were seasoned members at that time. We also felt that we were members that read everything we were given. We get 100-page packets every other week. We read those word for word. But there were some things that we missed clearly, and some things that it not only happened in our district, but it happened in a lot of other districts. So we want to share with you some of the lessons learned. And we had to learn these things very, very quickly. It's a very steep learning curve, especially in monitoring budgets, but it's one that school committee members really need to get up to speed with as quick as possible. You know, you want to do your best for your constituents and for your stakeholders. And what that means is keeping a close eye on those budgets. So we're going to go into a few more details on that to help you manage that. And I'll turn it over to Julie.
Can we get the next slide, please? So this is a first series of discussions that we're going to have to talk about the school committee's members' role in budget oversight. So this is just a general overview. We'll get more in depth when we get into different subject areas. But the first couple of areas that you should know is the warrants. you have different types of warrants. You have an AP warrant, which is your invoices that have to be paid once or twice a month if you're a larger district, and your payroll warrants. So for your AP warrants, they need to be signed by 3 members of the school committee, the superintendent, and your district treasurer. It should be done in open session. If you are a small district, it's probably reasonable to ask the business office to put together the warrants for you so you can review them before and ask questions before you sign the warrant package. But for larger districts, it's probably not feasible. Our district, Wachusett, generates millions of dollars in invoices that they pay monthly, so absolutely not feasible for staff to be copying and packaging that for your review. So we recommend that you pull randomly through the warrant probably 10 invoices to be reviewed, and I think that's a fairly good sample to audit once a month to make sure everything's in check. I wouldn't even look at the dollar amount, just randomly pick 10. For your salaries, what you should be getting, and what happens unfortunately is when you go to, it should be every 2 weeks, 3 members should be going into the office to sign those warrants, or it should be done in a business and finance subcommittee meeting, and we highly recommend that every district have a business and finance in some manner subcommittee. It doesn't matter how small your committee is. You need to have that constant oversight. As Stacy said, 90% of your job is budget oversight and safeguarding taxpayers' money. So with payroll, you should be getting your gross pay, the withholdings accounts outlined, a line item for each, and the accounts with balances that the salary is paid from, and the accounts with balances that the withholdings are going to, so that you can see the gross that you're liable for and what the net is, and not just the net. End of the year report is another tremendous responsibility of the school district and school committee. It's a report that's compiled in at the end of the year in September. It's submitted to Dusty. It's a listing of all the financial accounting of the district. But for a regional school district, it's extremely important. Can we go to the next slide, please? For Schedule 7 to be submitted, because that's your regional transportation reimbursement. So you will get a friendly reminder from Jay Sullivan at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Finance Department if your report is late. He will usually give you to the end of October to get this in. If it's not in, then he will delay your regional transportation reimbursement in November, and you will only be getting 1 payment, which will affect your cash flow, which is very important for a regional district. A regional district is very different than a standalone municipal district in that it functions as a municipality, so that you are responsible through your district treasurer to monitor and make sure your cash flow, you have enough cash to meet your liabilities. So that is very important for school committee members to not only review, but to check, to make sure that the information provided on regional transportation is correct, because that greatly affects your reimbursement.
I would add one thing into on the end of the year report, especially Schedule 7, that the chairman of the school committee has to sign that and be reviewed for that. So it's a very important report to go in. There is work that has to be done to calculate how many students are over 1.5 miles, and those are what you're reimbursed for. So it has to be done, and it has to be back up to that to justify that cost of eligible cost for the reimbursement. Thank you.
And Mars is available to help the business managers with those end of the year reports as well.
One of the things Mars does do is that we do run a training program, a full day in June, half day in June, a full day in September, plus emails during the summer on how they have to fill that out. So we offered that, and this will be into our 4th or 5th year coming.
Can we go to the next slide, please? We will be getting into the reports that you should be receiving from the business and your business office and your business manager monthly to oversee budget management. So you're in a comfortable position to sign your warrants. in a different presentation. However, I have to stress that the information that you do receive currently from your business manager, they do like to use Excel spreadsheets. And they do it so they can make a presentation to school committee members, because they do understand that school committee members come from different walks of life and they don't all have business backgrounds. So they try to present the information in layman's terms, not only for the school committee member, but also for the public. So it's easily understandable, which is very helpful and necessary. However, as a school committee member, you need to make sure that the information contained in the Excel spreadsheet is backed up by district software. Business managers should not be doing any form of budget management through Excel spreadsheets. They should be using the district software and just using Excel spreadsheets for presentations or for their own within department presentations or management. But however, everything gets inputted into the software and generated, Excel spreadsheets generated from that information. One of the biggest reasons the Wachusett Regional School District had an issue in 2012 was because that wasn't happening. Our district software was not being utilized. Excel spreadsheets were instead in most departments, and that just leads to human error. So when you get an Excel spreadsheet from your business manager, you want to make sure that they are backing it up with printouts from the software that can support the information that you're receiving in the spreadsheet. Certainly doesn't have to be distributed to the public because they are complicated and difficult to understand, but you should, as a school committee member, be getting that. And if it's not automatically given into you, you should ask for it. If it's something that the whole school committee doesn't feel it's necessary, I strongly recommend that you get it for yourself anyway, just to become familiar with your software that the district is using. As we stated before, every school committee should have a business and finance subcommittee. It's tedious to go through budget oversight and the reports that you get from your business manager in a full session, because you do have a lot of other things that you need to talk about with your superintendent during regular school committee meetings. So if you have a subcommittee meeting where you can get into the weeds, into the details, and it's also a nice backup for your business manager to have another set of eyes to look at information. When you get an Excel spreadsheet, don't ever assume that the information on there is adding up or it's factual, because it wasn't in the Wachusett district. If we had taken out a calculator and done simple calculations just to check the information that we were receiving, we would have seen that there were gross errors in the millions of dollars. So when you get your Excel spreadsheets or the information that you're receiving from your business manager as a group together, just go through it, eyeball it, make sure everything's looking appropriately and adding up. Ask those questions. That's your time in a business and finance subcommittee to ask the business manager, explain this to me more in detail. How are you getting this information? Don't ever think that a question or you're not understanding something, that you're the only one that doesn't understand it. Chances are everyone at the table has the same question. If a business manager responds to you, answers your question in terms that are too complicated or not layman's term, I think that's a little bit of a red flag. You want to scale it back and ask for more information. MASBO is a Mass Association of School Business Officials, and they have a wonderful service where they will go into a business manager's office in a district and interview people and review the process and procedures that the district is using to make sure it's best practice, and then offer helpful advice to do things better, more efficiently. You're going to have a sound business office if you have sound business policies, and that stems from two places. It stems from your school committee business policies, and also the procedure policies of your business manager. You want to make sure that both of those are in place, and if you don't know if you have them, ask to see them. And if you don't have business policies, then you need to develop them, and I would highly recommend that you contact MARS or MASBO to help you with that process. And can we go to the next slide, please? Do you want to do that?
A couple other key lessons that we learned in the course of this is any increases to an approved general budget is considered a budget amendment, which requires school committee approval and the approval of member towns. When we had our financial challenges, we looked to, we'll use money that would have gone into E&D and things like that. And anything that is being used on the general budget needs to have everyone's approval, both school committee and the member towns. E&D funds, so E&D is excess and deficiency. It's the rainy day fund. It's free cash if you're a municipality. It's the money that closes out any surpluses for the year, closes out into E&D. E&D funds cannot be appropriated by an authority until they are certified. So even though you suspect you will have surplus funds at the end of the year, those cannot be used until they are certified. They cannot be used during a fiscal year unless it was approved by the member towns. The only time that you can use that is in the case of a revenue shortfall, a 9C cut or something like that. Also, budget documents should be provided to you well in advance of a meeting. You need to go into a meeting well prepared with what you're going to be discussing and what you're going to be voted on. Typically, school committee members should be receiving their packet of information several days before a meeting, so you have time to review that. If while you're reviewing it, you have questions, it's okay to fire off an email to your business manager, to your superintendent, to ask clarifying questions prior to the meeting. If you don't understand the information you're given and you're voting on it, it is okay to abstain from voting. There had been times in the past where we were given information sitting at the school committee table and asked to vote upon it. That's not appropriate, because as a school committee member, you are representing your town and you're representing your constituents. And if you don't have all of the facts and you're not able to really thoroughly weigh those out, then you really should not be voting on that. You need to do your homework, read your packet, ask questions, request further information, and do whatever you need to do to be comfortable with what you're voting on. If you're ever asked why you voted a certain way, you need to be able to justify that to yourself, to your constituents, to all the stakeholders. So we hope in the course of this video that you've learned some things. We did kind of do a very high-level overview, and then down the road we will be working on getting things a little more in-depth to help you navigate this complex area. So we thank you for your attention.